everything is working right. And of course, having the power go out is just reset everything. Okay, looks like it's streaming. Make sure it's out on Twitter.
Two waiting, my injured ass and Matt's mom. I feel like Tommy's getting more esoteric the more deeper he goes into orthodoxy. Like at some point, he's just gonna be talking in images. Like,
he's the old man yelling at the cloud.
No, he'll become the cloud.
He'll become the cloud. Yeah. Oh yeah, Tommy's one of my favorite people in the world. He is absolutely fantastic to hang out with.
Tommy's one of those guys. I've probably felt the same thing about you, but specifically about Tom. Whereas I just saw one of his videos. I'm like, immediately liked him. Like, didn't know anything about him, hadn't talked to him on the show, hadn't done whatever that, and I was like, yep, like that guy. Well, whoever that guy is, I like him. Want to hang out with that dude. It's probably the biker trucker look. See, there you go.
Yeah, he's a good old boy. You just
symbols now, Tom. Appreciate it.
He's responding appropriately. We're beginning to experience semiotic collapse.
Yes. Which is apropos for the conversation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome aboard, folks. This stream was supposed to go out. What is it now? Almost half an hour ago. And
this is a Matt Erickson stream. The fact that this is actually happening is amazing.
I texted you that God is mocking me. Like God is laughing at me. I got up early this morning. I get all raring to go I'm like, all right, I'm going to be on time, because I know that if I'm not on time, then I'm going to have Tommy and Jason in my mentions reminding me that I'm not on time. And then of all the times for it to happen, it's when Jason is actually going to be on the show with me. 10 minutes before I'm supposed to go live, I literally just turned on my camera, turned on the lights, got the whole stream set up, everything's ready to go. And literally the moment I turned this light on, poof, all the power just knocks out in the whole house. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me.
I called them some favors in Texas. That's what happened. I was like, this cannot stand.
It's the Australian intelligence agency headed up by Jason. That's why Jason actually moved to Australia.
Hey, man. The friend or Fred is like, it is a psyop. Don't worry.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm usually the person who needs to, I'm the person who never puts off updating my computer. Like, as soon as a little window pops up, it needs to be updated. I'm usually like, all right, let me find a spot here to button things up. Because I also have a million tabs and a million different windows and a million different projects all going at the same time. And I don't want the computer to automatically shut itself down and kill all that. So I want to control it. I go through and I should write everything down, restart the computer, go find something to do, come back, blah, blah, blah. Well, this time I've been putting it off for the last few days. Been really busy. Just come on, just push it off. Just push it off. I need to use my computer right now. And then when I leave my computer, I forget to start it. And it's been a whole thing. And I've been giving my wife a hard time because she keeps telling me, she's like, I think my computer's just like on its last legs. It'll barely function. And I'm like, well, when was the last time you updated it? And she's like, I update it. I'm like, well, when? Like how long have you been ignoring it? And she's been ignoring all the different updates for weeks or months. I'm like, well, maybe
she bought a new power cord for like about 6 months ago. It's the same thing, right? Like,
yeah, right. So then it, the great irony, the great cosmic irony, it turns right around on me, and I don't put it off, and then it just screws everything. So, so here we are, finally live. We've got
excuses, just a long list of excuses. Like,
I'm going to drop you off this stream so fast. Anyone who's been following, I feel like I was going to make some comment about how I'm bringing in the great 2-bit audience, but I feel like after this much time here, I think we have the same audience. we have basically the exact same people that watch your streams. They watch my streams. So
more or less, yeah.
So I did an episode a couple days ago talking about my goodness, I'm up above the garage, and I think my wife is going to do a picnic in the front yard with Eastwood today, and it sounds like somebody's tearing the garage apart underneath me. So I hope everything's going well down there. Did a stream the other day talking about this other stream to be very meta about it, the Uber Boyo and David Gornosky stream where they're talking about Nietzsche through the lens of they're kind of debating the Nietzschean lens of reality versus the Christian lens of reality, and to what extent those are the same lens and to what extent they're different is kind of the elaboration of their conversation. And this is actually a conversation that Uber Boyo has been in with Christian or Christian adjacent people for a while now. I heard that he'd had a conversation with Jonathan Pajot, so I searched that out. I looked up Uber Boyo and Pajot and found that they've had multiple back and forths precisely on this subject, talking about the Nietzschean metaphysic versus the Christian metaphysics. And so I started watching one of those this morning here while I was doing my morning walk with my dog. It was a stream that was on the Break the Rules podcast a couple of years ago between Uber Boyo and Jonathan Pajot, and they're talking about this subject here. So that's given me, as often happens, that's given me a whole bunch of thoughts, and I can't think without talking. I have to find somewhere to put the thoughts out into the world, but so that I can actually process them. So that's what I'm here for. And then the other thing that I have been watching the last 24, 48 hours since that last show is the AI debate between Cyprian and Hotep Jesus. And it's interesting how these two conversations collide, the implications that they have for one another. I touched on the AI thing on the last stream a couple days ago, sort of in passing. I didn't spend a lot of time on it because I don't want to I don't want to necessarily directly respond to that conversation because it's more I'm just inspired by it, but I don't want to necessarily be have it be perceived that I'm talking at them versus talking at the conversation that they're having. And I just decided that I'm just going to bite the bullet and just get into it and just talk about it. And I might do another stream where I'm actually playing clips from that one and responding directly to the arguments that are being made, because I think both of them make a really compelling case. But it really comes down to the relationship between technology and the end of the world and the Christian experience. And then of course this has a lot of overlap with the Uber Boyo's Nietzschean perspective in conflict or in tension or in discussion with Pajot's symbolic world orthodox perspective. So those are the subjects that we're going to try to pull apart and flesh out here today. But before I do that real quick, I need to take our beautiful smiling faces off of this screen. And there we go. I want to tell you guys about Fox and Sons Coffee. So I did my first time I told you about these guys was this last episode, which actually turned into 2 episodes. But so if you're new to the stream, this is a new sponsor for this show. And I actually, there's something that I think there can be a lot of cynicism around people who do like produce content. It's kind of like a buzzword, people who produce content. And there's like this negative connotation about people who produce content and then get sponsored for it. It can be really hard to tell where the grift ends and the sincerity begins, or vice versa. And in this particular case, my vision for the world that I think we're kind of going to get into a little bit here today is a perspective. It involves a perspective on business where the purpose of going into business is not just to generate money, but that's like a driving motivation, because the money generated in honest business is a reflection of the value that's been produced by that business. And I think that the best kind of business is one that you can have, there's kind of a quadrant here that you can break down of a business model that suits the person delivering the business model, that does not suit the person receiving the business model. And then you can get the one, it doesn't suit either of them. And then the one where it suits both of them. The best kind of a business model is one that benefits the person who's on the receiving end of it. So in other words, the customer or the client or the person who's receiving. The best businesses provide that value while also providing value to the person who is producing. Some things are better to produce than others. And in this case, number one, coffee is something that's very healthy, very good for you. It's an interesting factoid I learned recently is that coffee, as the way that we use it, was discovered by Orthodox monks in Ethiopia. And what they learned is that through their ascetic practices, one of the things they did was they would pray for a really long time. They'd be up all night praying, and they found that drinking coffee actually improved their dedication and their ability to perform these ascetic rituals, and it enhanced their prayer life. Um, and then, I mean, if you followed Ray Pete at all, you've understood he talks a lot about the value and the benefit of coffee, especially coffee with sugar. If you take coffee with sugar together, it actually essentially the low IQ my version of the story is essentially you give the sugar to the coffee to consume, and the process of the coffee consuming that sugar inside you has major positive metabolic effects. So I think coffee is a fantastic substance, but there's also a million different people who are all producing coffee. And a lot of people, some people just like, I don't care. I'm just going to go to the McDonald's drive through and just get my cup of black water and, just call it coffee. And, that's fine. If that's your speed, then more power to you. But I think once you've drank a good cup of coffee, you're not going to feel the same way about the coffee drinking experience. Fox and Sons is legitimately a good cup of coffee. Amy, my wife, is a bit of a coffee connoisseur, and she has been raving to me about how good Fox and Sons coffee is. Her mother-in-law was here my mother-in-law was here for the last couple of weeks, and she has her own coffee that she drank. And so just for simplicity's sake, they just drank that coffee. And Amy couldn't wait to get back to drinking the Fox and Sons coffee after she left. But the best part about this company and why I did this whole big long lead up is that the reason that this company exists is because the founder, Stephen Fox, he started this company specifically so that he could teach his sons what it means to provide value to other people and to engage in the discipline of starting a business, working a business, running a business, generating value for other people, reinvesting your profits and managing them, which is this is like a foundational part of what it means to be a man. So the King Pilled message is all about becoming a king and taking control of your own domain. And that's what I see with Stephen Fox. That's why I reached out to him and I wanted Fox and Sons to be a sponsor of this show. So all that big lead in aside or taken into account, you can use code KING at checkout when you order your supply of Fox and Sons coffee. Use code KING at checkout and you're going to get 18% off any order over $25 or more. And I'm telling you, you want to order this stuff. You want to drink this coffee because it's very, very good coffee, very good quality, high quality coffee that tastes phenomenal. It's the best coffee I've ever tasted. But also because you're supporting this show and me being late to every show, and you're supporting this family, this man, as he is teaching his sons how to become men. So you can go to Fox and Sons, that's FOXNSONS.com, foxandsons.com. Use code KING at checkout. You're going to get 18% off orders of $25 or more, and shipping will always be free on orders of $37.99 or more. So foxandsonscoffee.com, promo code KING. All right, let me pull this down here. Check on the chat here. Tommy,
before today, before that ad read, Tommy had the best Fox and Sons ad read of all time, because as anyone who's listened to Tommy Salmon show knows that he says it's he likes having a big cup of BBC in the mornings and very strong. Just get some BBC in your mouth, big bold coffee, and it always makes me laugh. and I always thought that was the best Fox and Sons ad read out there. No offense, Buck. But no, you just surpassed it, Tommy. You got to up your game, man. You went to history. There was like information. I teared up at one point. Fantastic, sir.
Mr. Stoic himself, his emotions removed.
I'm getting older. I get
soft in your old age.
It surprises me every single time.
Tommy here says he's in the chat and he says that he and his beloved wife, they drink over a pound of Fox and Sons every week. They are supporting Fox and Sons the way that we all should be supporting Fox and Sons.
I'm personally tweaking out on some English breakfast tea that my wife bought because she bought like this loose leaf tea, which I'm not a big believer in. But also that I also don't know like amounts that you should put in. So I just put in like boom, 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 and added some water because it's tea, like fuck tea, whatever. And I'm tweaking. I'm like 2 cups of that, my friend. I'm a little jazzed up. They're like, this might be a wild ride. I'm very excited about the new Taylor Swift album that's dropping. Apparently, Twitter.
Oh no!
Twitter told all of Australia to drop everything for this thing, and I'm very excited about it. Twitter tells me this is what I'm paying $8 a month for. So,
oh man, I think that's probably the first Taylor Swift reference that's ever been made on King Pilled.
Gotta make it. I actually don't even know who this person is. Like I
remember
her. I see her name. That's all I know.
I don't understand the Taylor Swift phenomenon. That could be an interesting episode in and of itself. I'd have to get somebody who's actually really followed it closely because I've just kind of seen
Cooper.
it from afar.
That's Cooper's territory. You know that.
Yeah, probably.
Cooper's got all her albums.
Yep.
Probably one that's signed.
Cooper is a Swiftie. I remember being in high school, and this has nothing to do at all whatsoever with what we're talking about, but maybe we'll figure out a way to segue it as we go. When I was in high school, I remember when Teardrops on My Guitar came out, which was, I'm pretty sure that was her first big hit. It was high school, college, somewhere in my 18 to 22 range. And it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of a sweet little simple country girl song, you know, like the high school cheerleader sort of Midwest America vibe. And then like every single song that ever came out was all like her reliving this exact same experience over and over and over and over again. It's a repetition of the exact same experience in different words. And now, to be fair, I haven't listened to basically any of her newer stuff. I've heard it, so I'm aware that it's a very different vibe than a lot of what she used to do, or her kind of country pop before, and now she's more, I don't even know how you'd categorize her. But I don't know, there's just something it was so emotionally shallow in a negative way to her music that I just never understood it. But yet it had these sorts of phenomena in society where there's this thing that for whatever reason, it's obviously very powerful. Like it's self-evidently very powerful, but in looking at it, I can't figure out the power in it. I don't understand where that's coming from.
Mimesis.
Here's our
modeling.
segue.
It's modeling. Yep. 9 times out of 10 with all this stuff. So I mean, I'm vaguely aware of who Taylor Swift is. I'm assuming her demographic is mostly like 13 to 24-year-old girls.
Well, you would think, but that's kind of the bizarreness of the phenomenon that it like there are a lot of dudes who are not necessarily like, I mean, there are some guys who listen to Taylor Swift that it's like, yeah, of course that guy listens to Taylor Swift, but there are also
Cooper.
People who right, exactly, like Cooper, but there are also people who are like serious people who will be like, oh yeah, man, just got a soft spot for Taylor Swift. And I'm like, why? I don't understand it. It seems so vapid.
We all have our guilty pleasures. I would without knowing their backstory, I would assume that most people would like what's my Kylie Minogue was always my guilty pleasure, right? Like I listened to like Tom Waits.
You're dating
really
yourself.
Depressing. Yeah, no. Well, yeah. I'm freaking old, dude. But yeah, she was always my, I could listen to like Locomotion or someone. I'm like, yeah, it's a good song,
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people like that who it's poppy, it's whatever, right? Like you don't think about it, you just do it. Yeah, see, Buck's feeling very old right now too. I know. So I think there's probably a lot of that. So we don't have to get too high-minded about it. Mm-hmm. For a lot of other people, though, it's mimetic because I think when we get into AI, we'll talk about mirroring. So Taylor Swift is probably a model to some because they want to be like her, but also let's say her songs, people will start to mirror the song because again, it's all surface. So, I mean, what does she sing about? I think she's a breakup girl, right? She talks about, she always sings about, okay. So yeah, there you go. People are connecting to a breakup. and that's the thing that they're mimetically reproducing, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
that's the hook, let's say, for mirroring. So you're mirroring that experience in your life because you have some connection to breaking up, or and you want to be the pretty girl who's, but I don't know. Like,
When
again,
we were talking,
I don't know her well enough to like get too high minded about it. But yeah, it's almost all everything. Once you get into the mimetic rabbit hole, it's like everything kind of ties back into it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what this. Going back and forth, listening to these conversations between Pajot and Uberboyo and Granovsky, and Cyprian and Hotep Jesus. I don't know why I'm like I'm an insane person, because like I don't sit and listen to one of these conversations. I have all three of them queued up, and I'll listen to like 20 minutes of one, and then 40 minutes of the other, and then 15 minutes of the third one, and I'm like ping
God bless you.
ponging back through all of them. I don't understand how or why. But I feel like with these conversations they're having, that these are not conversations that would have been had like this until very recently. Like there's a veil has been torn, and these conversations are now like piercing through it. And almost every single one of these conversations is a meta conversation. So we're having a meta conversation about a meta conversation about a stack of meta conversations. This is the way that this is like how the human subconscious organism proliferates, is through looking back on itself constantly. You made a distinction before we went live. We were kind of talking briefly, and you made a distinction between, I think you said, between mirroring and mimesis, or is
Yeah.
mirroring a subset of mimesis? Go into that distinction.
So Girard, most people who get into Girard hear about like mimetic rivalry, which is usually the big thing, right? Where the more alike we are, the more we will enter into conflict, because essentially his basic theory is that all desires are external. Your needs are internal. You need to eat. You don't need someone to model eating for you. But you do look for models for what to eat. So like veganism is, and someone just said this recently. I think maybe this is I might be ripping this off of David Granowski, but you look to you look for models of what to eat or how to eat it or that kind of thing. But all desires are external, so we always look for what other people want and base our own desires on those things. It becomes really apparent when you're a parent to a young child, because your child will model everything you do, right? If you go into a drawer, the kid wants to get into that drawer. They have no idea what's in the drawer. Like there's nothing in that drawer that is interesting to them at all, but they want in that drawer because you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that becomes really, really easy to kind of get your head around. There's two other things that kind of come up in the theory. Mimesis, it's actually a really older theory. It goes right back to Plato and Aristotle. And basically their idea of what mimesis is like a reproduction of something in nature. So an easy example would be if you make a painting of a flower, that's mimesis. Like that's you are recreating the flower that exists in real life. Where it starts getting more interesting, and this is where Girard first came into the theory, because he started looking in literature, and like if you look at Don Quixote, the character Don Quixote is modeling himself after these romance novels of knights. So his entire idea of what a knight is and what his whole characteristic, what he's trying to be, is based on these novels. So it's not really a real knight; it's based on fiction. When you start doing things like that, then you get into a concept called mirroring. So mirroring is essentially just looking at the surface. Like it's like literally you look into a mirror. So all you're doing is copying things, but there's no but there's no depth there, because you're copying a facsimile. So it's not like you're looking to your dad and copying your dad and then trying to figure out motivations and all that all that other kind of stuff. You're really just copying what you can see and reproducing it. So when you get into stuff like AI, which essentially and I think you said this on the last stream, is just a computer program. It's what we put into it. Even the most advanced stuff that's coming out now that's freaking everybody out is just really, it's just reproducing things that it can get its hands on. So, write an essay like Jordan Peterson. Well, there has to be a Jordan Peterson, and there has to be Jordan Peterson writing like something or talking or something that it can reproduce. It can't reproduce something that isn't already existing. This is mirroring. And I guess the bitter white pill about all this whole thing is that because it relies on something to mirror, it'll spin itself out. Like it's not as threatening or dangerous as we all think it is. But of course, the danger is we're stupid animals. We're stupid little ape people sometimes, and we're gonna start worshiping this thing in a way that it shouldn't be worshipped because it requires us. It's going to be a really weird, I think, like a parasitical kind of relationship where we're going to worship this thing that needs us for input, and that's I think that's where this conversation starts. Really,
yes. So after the last stream that I did, we went onto the Discord, the King Pill Discord, and got into a voice chat where we started talking about this artificial intelligence conversation. And subscribestar.com/kingpilled if you want to join the Discord. Let me see exactly where to start with this, because you sent off, there's just fireworks going off in my brain while you were talking. In the debate between Cyprian and Hotep Jesus, I haven't finished the debate, but I'm through the debate part, and I'm into where they're kind of having a conversation. So basically, to summarize their positions as graciously as I can, with me having not completely finished it and haven't really kind of integrated it yet, I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. So if essentially their positions are on Hotep Jesus's side, the AI is going to create a new 1%, and I have the motivation, the willpower, I have the focus to ensure, maybe he'd say the moral fiber to ensure that I'm part of that 1%, and I take the good stuff that AI offers and leave out the bad stuff and maximize through that, and with the goal of helping people through the betterment of myself, essentially. And Cyprian has the pessimistic angle on it, where he essentially compared, right. He essentially compares it to, or says that it is the Ring of Power from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so he says Hotep Jesus is Boromir, essentially. And we can take the Ring of Power and we can use it for good, and we can, so without going down without stringing out the analogy really here, just kind of let's lift off from there and go up into this idea. So the thing, like what you're pointing out about AI, is essentially this is a machine that has been created by man, and as every machine that is created by man functions, it functions in a codependent relationship with man. A machine or a technology that exists apart from, it doesn't exist apart from man, because there has to be some reason for the thing to be created, and that reason comes from the man. So even if you generate this, you get AI doing what AI, right, I think AI is a danger. I think that this application of AI is a particular type of danger, and it's important to properly articulate what that danger is. So the thing with this AI is that it is generative. It can produce things that didn't already exist. Now, as you're pointing out, it needs the things that already exist in order for it to produce those things. Now, if you take this another level, it takes things that do not exist, or it takes things that already exist, and it alchemically transforms them into something new based on the thing that didn't exist. Now, that new thing that exists does not have, you're a level removed from the actual thing. But then AI is going to iterate on that, this new thing that it's created. It's going to iterate on that and create another thing, and then it's going to iterate on that, And what it's doing is it's departing from reality. It's spinning off away from reality, and one little iteration at a time, and then exponentially. And human beings have a tendency to worship our technologies. We manufacture a technology and we worship it. This is the same phenomenon, as other people pointed out. This wasn't my original idea at all. This is the same phenomenon as pagans worshiping idols. They've developed this physical piece of technology made out of stone. AI runs on computer networks that are essentially ground up dust that's energized. So ground up stones that are energized. We have the same thing. We have our idols that are that we worship. We worship them the same way the ancients did. This is paganism. This is why I said last week that this idea of like pagan Christianity. This is the pagans phenomenon that's been ported into Christianity. And so now this AI technology is going to be worshipped in the way that the rocks were worshipped. But the people who are worshiping them now, the people who are worshiping them self-consciously know that it is a rock and that they're not worshiping the rock itself. They don't like the people today have this almost more ancient sense that's developing that there is a difference between the physical thing and the thing the physical thing represents, but also you can look at the physical thing as if it is the thing that it represents. So you can map that onto it and treat it as if it is. So you get like Elijah referring to a statue as Baal. The statue is Baal because it functions as Baal, but it is also not Baal. It's also just a carved statue. And to say that it is the God that it represents, that literally is physically what it is, when you're speaking to the modern mind, I think that's delivering the wrong idea. So AI is not a demon. AI will be used as a proxy for demonic activity in the same way every single piece of technology throughout the history of mankind has been used that way, all the way back to a literal physical rock that you use to brain someone with. These are all proxies for demonic activity because they're technologies being wielded by men. And if the men don't have their heads on straight, so to speak, the men are going to embody an archetype that is not Christ, that stands in the place of Christ, which is Antichrist. This is the phenomenon of Antichrist. So somehow I feel like I'm agreeing with Cyprian and I'm agreeing with Hotep Jesus, but I also disagree with both of them. And yeah, I've kind of ranted for a minute here. I got to gather my thoughts. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing, right? God humbles himself, come down as one of us, representation of us. And the question always really is why, in my old atheist ways, like why would God do that? Because again, you're leaving out a whole bunch of things that not you, but I'll talk about me. Like I was leaving out a whole bunch of things that I just wasn't calculating into my concept of God and what that's all about. Because God could come down as a big beam of light, a heavenly specter, probably got a lot more eyes on them. But that wasn't the point. The point about coming down, humbling himself to be a man is to properly have a proper model for us. We can model Christ. And the reason we can model Christ is because Christ, even though he's perfect and we are not, and even not trying to compare ourselves to him, but there's a representation, right? We understand that Christ made flesh, God made flesh. He still suffers from a lot of the same things we did. Certainly suffered in a way that no other God has ever suffered, and that now creates an absolute model for us in a way that a metaphysical, non-substantiated essence of God can't, because you can worship a nebulous thing all you want, but you can't ever be it. It's
Mm.
always beyond you. So suddenly Christ is us, and we can become Christ, or as close to it as we can. That's the transformative part of the Gospels. That's why it broke the scapegoat mechanism. That's why it. That's why AI. And if you're an Orthodox faithful, and I'm not casting stones, although I have some in my bag, but not casting stones at anyone in particular. But if you really, because who the hell am I? I'm just a guy with an Orthodox cross in his bio name on Twitter. But if you really believe in both God's plan and in the message of Christ, in the resurrection, then you don't worry about this stuff. Like, this is not the stuff to worry about, because it can't work. It can work for a lot of
Yes.
people. It can work for a lot of people, and a lot of people will be led astray. But you know what? They're already astray. Like the people this is going to work on, trust me, they're not. They're already pretty lost. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to bring them back into the light or get them on the royal path or anything like that. Yeah, sure. But they're so bloody far off on this. And I'll speak to myself. I mean, me without revelation would be one of these people who are like, oh, AI, oh, or in awe of it, or whatever. I look at this thing as a neat little toy that's going to piss off a bunch of academics and good, make a whole bunch of white collars really nervous, which is, I think, fantastic. But other than that, don't sweat this, because you can't model nothing. You can't model an idea or a concept. You can't. Like, it's literally impossible. You can't. We don't have the processing to, let's say, try to model a metaphysic. We can act it out. We can ritualize it. We can do all these other things with it, but we can't be it. And because we can't be it, it fails. It's always going to fail. It always will fail. It's why ideologies always fail. It's because it's an idea. How can you model an idea? We try to create. Stalin becomes the ultimate Soviet, right? That's like he understood this, where he became communism. Like the man alone, and he was worshipped as almost like a man god, and then he died, and the whole thing collapsed, because that's the only other thing we can do is create an AI man who everyone will try to be like. But if it's actually on the screen, you can't do it, because it's how unless you unless we get into like, well, if you're in VR space, I don't know. Like, I mean, you can whizzle waddles, when we have diodes in our heads, and sure, maybe, I don't know. But I'm just dealing with what we have right now. I'm not worried at all, because you can't be nothing. It's just like it's impossible.
This is so something that ties in. Okay, I'm trying to think of how to. Again, you've got the fireworks just firing off. In this conversation between Pajot and Uberboyo on Break the Rules podcast, there's a comment that was left on there addressing kind of an interchange that was in there, but there was a couple points in this comment that I wanted to highlight here. So one of the hosts is asking questions from a really materialistic perspective. He's asking questions that are kind of like, so when the Bible talks about the New Jerusalem coming down, and it describes it as basically like a gold box, like, is this like how is this not like a spaceship or something? And Jonathan's like, dude, like, you got to understand the language of symbolism. The symbolism is a language that isn't a one-for-one representation of the symbols themselves. So he's asking questions that are where he's trapped in this materialist lens. He's not breaking through. He's not seeing the way that the materialist and mystical, if you want to call it that way, the two realities interact with each other. It's not even two realities; it's one reality, but it's our subject to our perception of it. So, the comment here said, pointed out that he's just materialistic, like Jonathan was saying. He said he's asking about material things and scientifically measurable things, and he's trying to take human experience, human consciousness, human attention, awareness, and intention out of the question. And he says the logos, and he says, or the Tao, or the Word of God, or God the Son, because I think these are all ideas that people have used to try to encapsulate and understand the role that Christ actually plays. The logos incarnated as a human. This is where the idea became reality. So, like you like to say, was it the reality and the ritual are one?
The ritual and reality are one.
Yeah, the ritual and the reality are one. So the idea, the truth became flesh. The truth incarnated. And there you get the meeting of what we perceive as these two realms that are in like dyadic tension with one another. This is where it becomes evident that these realms are not in dyadic tension with one another. They are the same realm. The spiritual realm is where we live. We experience physical manifestations of it, and we experience the spiritual manifestations of it. But that distinction is something that happens exclusively in our minds. That distinction doesn't exist in reality. So then he goes on to say, we are humans. So the Word of God incarnated as a human. We are humans. We can't understand reality beyond our human perspective. Thus, the Logos incarnate is the ultimate image for us. There's nothing beyond that. This is where iconography comes in. The icon captures the image. It's not the same thing as the image, but it captures it and it points your attention toward it. It aligns your attention to the image, or to the meaning behind the image, rather. He said, talking about planets, other universes, energies, or even abstract Platonic ideas do not matter in themselves, but only according to and in the human experience. And in that scenario of the human experience, the Christian story revealed everything related to humans. There is nothing more to existence from a human perspective. Next step is becoming saints and being deified, period. And that escapes this materialistic view. So he says the spiritual realm is not another dimension. Spiritual doesn't fit into the modern scientific understanding. The spiritual is what informs the material, and that can't be studied by modern science. Things of this world only point to a spiritual reality, but are not the spiritual reality. Even theology, metaphysics, philosophy, and all of that only points us to the spiritual world, but they are not the spiritual world and cannot get a hold of what that spiritual reality is in itself for now. We can only live in that spiritual reality as humans, and for that we must follow the human/God steps. So this is where God, as the creator and the sustainer and the very essence of being and existence, became human and bound human experience to the divine experience. And then we participate in that reality by following in the steps behind that. Now, we've gone a little far afield from the AI thing, and I want to tie back into that again. But do you have additional thoughts on this subject?
Oh yeah, tons. I mean,
go for it.
Even that whole ritual and reality are one thing. Is like, so the critical part about Jesus being the model is that we can act out Jesus. We can act him out symbolically. We can act him out, in praxis. We can act him out in many different ways.
Yeah, I can't act out communism, but I can act out Christ. I was thinking about the word Christian today. We think of Christian, we say Christian, but Christian is actually a Christian. I am a Christian. I am Christ-ing. I'm Christian.
I am trying to be like Christ. I am modeling Christ, essentially.
Yes.
And that's the more important distinction. What AI can do, just to respond a little bit to what Buck was saying, is that so what AI can do is act as a moderator. So Girard makes a distinction between model and moderator. One of the better examples he does is through Othello. So Iago is a moderator. He's not modeling Othello's desires. He's manipulating them, right? That's like the algorithm. The algorithm shows you what it thinks you like, or what it knows you like, with any kind of degree of certainty, goes, you might like this, and click on that, and whatever that. These are all just desires that but again, it's dependent on knowing what you already like. You have to take the first step of input. Your input is the most important thing. Again, here's the white pill. You don't have to turn off all electricity. You can just stop. And I know that's the hardest thing for people. The little game I'm playing on Twitter with this guy is because I realize what his desire is, and I'm just keep baiting him, right? Where's my box of chocolates? Because it's like, because I know what he wants. What he wants is just to tell me I'm wrong, and I'm like, I can let you tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not, but I don't care. But I want something in exchange, and you can play that little thing. But it's like the first input is what gets you, and what keeps you in there is that your desire is never fulfilled, because it can't be fulfilled, because what you think you desire isn't what you even desire, right? Ultimately, Girard believes that the ultimate human desire, that the core of all human desire, is for transcendence. That's what drives all of us at all points from birth onwards, because we want to be more than us in some way, shape, or form. And every other desire that you meet along the road, you think is fulfilling that. You think the car is going to do it. You think the success, the house, the this, the that, whatever. Eventually it's all meaningless, because that's not the thing.
What we
you want
desire
is the thing behind it.
Yes, what we desire is to have proper desire. We desire, because you think we desire and we get, but we don't stop desiring. We keep desiring. So our goal is to desire. Our goal is not to get what fills the desire. Our goal is to desire. And if we don't get the desire that properly, if we don't desire the thing that properly fills us, then we're going to continue to desire without being fulfilled. So you're going to get empty desire.
So the only true rightful passion is the passion of the Christ.
Yes.
Desiring the cross. Sorry, I just got goosebumps. Is the most proper desire, because it is desiring both transcendence and suffering, the high and the low. It's the cross. It's both right and wrong, truth and deception. You're standing right in the middle of it, and you're carrying it voluntarily. You choose it, and by making that choice, now you're free of the loop. You're free of the mimetic spiral. Right now, you're on the royal path, and that's what that is. It's making that choice, and the more conscious you are of the choice, either through revelation or whatever have you, is the more freeing it is. That's how the cross gets lighter.
When you desire the cross, which is to desire to exist as Christ, then Christ fills you with his spirit, and his spirit orients your desire properly toward the Father. And that's the relationship of the Trinity right there in that process. And that is what theosis is. That is the theosis process, is orienting yourself toward the ultimate desire, toward the Logos, toward the Word of God. Orient yourself toward the Word of God. And the Word, you have in orienting yourself toward a word, you're taking on, when you speak, and you're taking on the actual words that are coming out of the person's mouth, the physical, or like the sensation of the experience of the speech, and the meaning behind it. You're taking in all three of those things at once when you hear a word. So when you orient yourself toward a word, you're orienting yourself toward all three of those things in one package, so to speak. There was something that we were talking about. So Christian, being a Christian, so orienting yourself toward Christ. The facsimile of this is being a Christian-ian, where you're orienting yourself toward being a Christian, versus being like Christ. When you substitute those and you turn it into being a Christian, you're now instead of modeling Christ, you're modeling Christianing. You're modeling the activity of being a Christian.
You're mirroring.
Yes, exactly. You're now mirroring Christianity rather than embodying it. This is what the progression of human thought for the last 1500 plus years has been, as this identity of a Christian became a thing. It was separated from Christ. There was being a Christian and there was being like Christ. Those two things, very subtly at first, they began separating, to where now being a Christian, like you listen to someone like I love Uber Boyo, but you listen to the way that he talks about his perception of Christianity. The two guys, the Break the Rules guys, the hosts, their perception of Christianity, as Pajot keeps pointing out, is you're describing like 18th century Protestantism. That's not Christianity.
Hey man,
the woke movement is this process.
When I was 32 years of an atheist, like and I had read the Bible many times, and I was very baked in the Chris Hitchens school and very much an anti-theist, and you know, I like to say about myself, I'm not that smart, but I'm not fucking stupid. So so I, you know, rationally, all my arguments made sense, and they did, because I was the Christianity that I thought I was attacking was all those bad things. And then by, you know, revelation and all the rest of it, I encountered orthodoxy, and through orthodoxy I'm like, oh, okay, so I was wrong about everything, like not just here or there, something over, you know, like, you know, some dogma. No, I was wrong about reality.
The cornerstone was wrong.
Yeah. That was, and if you want to talk about humbling and a shameful moment, that was a hard one to overcome. But where was I going with this? Yeah, but yes, to your point, people are model, or so it's like the rituals themselves became hollowed out. And I think, not to place blame on Roman Catholics or Protestants, because I think they're, you know, how, you know, what are you going to do? But when I think about things like fasting, like the Orthodox fast, Wednesdays and Fridays, or just, you know, a Great Lent. You can break it. It's like you can do what you want, right? Like there's no one standing over you. You're not going to get hit by a bolt of lightning, probably. Thank you, please. But let's not tempt. But you know, so why do you do it? Well, the best answer is you don't ask that question. You just do it. Like you just do it. It's the ritual you do, and it informs your reality of being an Orthodox Christian. And you can probably come up with some wonderful ideas and find a saint, or, you know, I'm sure there's tons of books written about the reasons for Lent, but you just do it, and you feel better. And oftentimes, you know, what I've learned recently is, like, you take a step off the royal path sometimes, and there's consequences, and they're not always immediately, you know, recognizable as a consequence at first, and then you're like, oh no, wait, I wouldn't be here in this crap position if I had stayed on the path or hadn't done XYZ. I wouldn't be here. Like legitimately.
The consequences are the signal that you're off the royal path.
Exactly.
The things that point you to it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, when you start to when you start to accept that context, whether, I guess what I would say to a secularist, whether you think it's real or not, it doesn't matter, because it is. Because all of a sudden you can contextualize your entire life through this thing. And it doesn't matter if Jesus walked on water or the symbology of therefore. It's just, you just accept it. Like, just accept it, move on, and model Christ. Now, don't try to walk on water, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
but if you need to walk on water, you probably will.
Yeah.
If you genuinely need it.
Yeah.
Buck here said people shy away from theosis because it feels as though the finish line can't be reached. The irony is that when you pick a goal where the finish line is achievable, you feel empty. That's profound. That's profound. The idea that theosis is us participating in the energies of God to the extent that we become like God. One of the energies of God is being God, along with wisdom and love and virtue and all the different energies of God. Truth, as we participate in these energies, we become like him. One of his energies is being God. So we begin to embody these energies. But the thing is, the God who we are learning to embody is eternal, and we are necessarily not eternal. So we are beginning to participate in that in the process, but there's an eternal distance to go to. I mean, it's incoherent to speak of an eternal distance. The computer lights itself on fire. But the thing is, with a timeless God, every moment is now. With the timeless God, every moment is simultaneously now. Then there is no. What does the Bible say that with God, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. So if you get too bogged down in the mimetic rivalry process that's happening, looking at the process itself, then you begin falling out of that timeless sense, that timeless state. You begin falling into time. And this falling into time, you're falling into mortality. As you look away from the truth, you begin falling into time, you begin falling into mortality, you begin falling away from God. Where human beings were put on earth to exercise dominion over the earth. And the one of the things I learned in as I was beginning to experience orthodoxy is that the incarnation was always planned. The incarnation was not a response to the fall. Christ was always going to incarnate, and he was going to unite divinity and humanity in that sense. So part of mankind exercising dominion over the earth, existing in this status of cooperative, submissive leadership through the Father, this Christ doing that was always the plan. Part of exercising dominion of the earth is this participation that has been offered to us. This participation that's there for us to latch onto if we desire to. And as we do, then these, in our perception, these two realities become one reality. They were always one reality, but now you see it. Now you experience it as one single reality. This is why you have saints where they talk about like saints being able to literally see demons like hanging on people, or saints being able to. There's the story in the Bible of, I think it was Elisha and his servant Gehazi, where Gehazi's like sees all the enemy troops around and he's freaking out. He's like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" And Elisha, I think it was Elisha, prays for him to be given proper vision. And then it's like scales are removed from his eyes and he sees the armies of the Lord around them. They were there all along. It's the same reality, but he couldn't see it until he was given the proper vision to see it. That vision now is at our disposal. That vision is something that we can take on by properly. I don't want to say something heretical here, so I'm going to say this very gently, but there's a sense in which, looking strictly from a material perspective, you can view the cross as a technology. It isn't a technology, but it can be viewed as a technology. And our mankind then manufactures technologies trying to replicate what the cross does. This is the story of mankind now throughout all of history. Every single thing is mankind. We generate technologies to get stuff done. But if we begin turning the technology into the God, if we begin replacing that, then we follow after other gods. And if you're following after a God who is not the essence of being and life and love and go on through the list, you're not going to have any of those things by default.
Right. But I mean, so, hey man, the arrow of history is a straight flies in a straight line. So I think one thing that Girard points out, and I know David Granowski's talked about this as well, is that oftentimes when you have these conversations, we talk about pre-Christ, pre-reincarnation, to go, these are all the bad things that could happen. But we live in a post-Christ world. We live in I should say, a post-resurrection world.
Right.
So
post the impact of Christ.
Right. So the reality, the cross changed reality for everybody, whether they have received the revelation, know who Jesus Christ is, or have read the Gospels or not. It's changed the fabric of reality. The Trinity changed everything from our conceptual nature of what being is. So when you have something like that happen, you can't undo it. There is no going back before it. It is now burnt into us. This again is the big white bill. And I want to be very clear. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, or I am in your tomorrow, because I am 12 hours ahead. So I kind of know what's happening, but I don't know, right? Like, I don't ever want to sound like I'm telling people, hey, don't worry, as the tidal waves coming crashing in. Like, you do what you need to do. And if people are saying, well, there's going to be a great deal of suffering, I'm like, yes, good, rejoice. Like, it's, I'm not saying I'm cheerleading someone's personal suffering, but at the same time, this is what we're called to do. So
when you understand what suffering is, then you know that it's a good thing when you're experiencing it.
Right. If AI begins to martyr us, well, we know where we're going. So
right.
Don't sweat it.
This is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
So this is where I don't want it to be. I've tried to figure out a way to make this critique more. This critique of the whole AI as a demon idea. I'm trying to make this more complex or more sophisticated than simply.
I'll help you.
Go ahead.
It's fucking stupid. It's not a demon. I'll say it. Matt can disavow everything I'm about to say here. It's fucking stupid. And if you think AI is an actual demon, sorry, it's fucking dumb. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying the idea in your head is dumb. Stop thinking it. It's dumb.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You can just not.
What I was trying not to say is that this particular manifestation of this fear of AI is just ludditism, but I think that's really what it's come down to me. Like, see, I think that AI is actually dangerous. I think it's something that should be treated soberly. We should respect the potential threat that it could bring to bear, but I don't think that it's a unique threat. And I think that treating it like one means that you're not focused on the other threats that are exactly like it that came in sequence just before it. The internet, social media, and you notice all of the people who are talking about AI in this way are avid users of the internet and social media. So they're avidly using the prior technology and saying, don't use the next one. And okay, maybe that's true. So then where do we draw this line now? How far back are we going to go where we're going to completely swear ourselves off of technology? Perhaps we need to.
The Wizard of Oz was an amazing documentary.
Right.
That's it. Because
there's monasteries for a reason. For the people who need that experience, that's what's there for.
I judge everyone by their actions more than their words. So if you're telling me that the eschaton is nigh and it's any day now, and this thing called Dan, do anything now is an acronym for Dan, and that's where the tribe of the Antichrist comes from in Revelation, and yada 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 yada. Okay, if that's what you believe, then I want to see you acting accordingly. It's like Obama saying that we're all going to be dead of rising sea levels, and then buying a beach house. These two things do not compute. So if I see you freaking the frick out and like getting off the internet and like going, hey man, get to Mount Athos, like, this is it. I still think you're wrong, but at least I'll applaud your commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Whereas if all you're doing is telling me to be very, very afraid of this thing that is I can just not use, I click it off and not use it. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of the screen. I'm afraid of people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, no, I misspoke. I'm not even afraid of people anymore. That was the most amazing thing that happened to me during Lent. Is I got to this point where I'm like, I'm no longer afraid. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just not. Now, I want to protect my daughter, and I have concerns about her and her safety because I want her to get to a point to live to a point where she can, you know, uh, take care of herself. So she's my responsibility to that point, and will always be on some level. But I don't fear for me or her or us anymore. Uh, and that was a new thing that I wasn't expecting. But when you feel it, you feel it. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I don't. I think the most likely outcome is like it's like the Wizard of Oz. AI will be the big powerful wizard that everyone will fear, and the floating head in the sky with holograms and all the rest of it. And in reality, it'll just be like Bill Gates behind a curtain. It'll be amazing that you'll eat the bugs, live in the pod, and send me your children. For a nice little island getaway. Uh, you'll know it by their fruits, and their fruits are going to be artificial fruits. They're going to be virtual
Mm-hmm.
fruits. It's nothing. But will it lead a lot of people astray? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Will it lead to a lot of misery and suffering? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It'll lead to misery and suffering, and people will be convinced it's the most joyous thing in the world. That'll be the weird inversion. But
This is
these are
the
still
same cycle. This is the same pattern that has persisted for I mean all of human existence. This is the epitome of the human story, from the Promethean myth, where technology is offered to humanity to further to be able to bootstrap their own salvation, bootstrap their own redemption. That's how technology is always pitched to us. It's pitched to us as the tool to use to bootstrap our own redemption. So technology, in a sense, is anti-Christian. It's an anti-Christ. Um, it's a thing that exists as a, how do I say this? It's a thing that exists. Part of what Pajot talked about is how the anti-Christ story is contained within the Christian story. So you don't get antichrist without Christ. The Christian story predicts that antichrist is inevitable. The Christian story says antichrist is coming. Antichrist, there will be an antichrist. And you can interpret that as there is going to be a particular historical event at a given date in time where a figure called the antichrist gets scratched into the story of human existence. Or you could interpret it as this is a model that will continue rearing its head so long as human beings continue to perpetuate its existence. The
well,
disciples
yeah.
perceive themselves as living in the end times. Every generation perceives themselves as living in the end times. And in a sense, we are in the end times. And in this is the end game sort of a sense, because the cross was like the start of human history. That's where humanity was fully taken up into divinity. That's where humanity first um, uh, connected to its telos. And we're now living in the time since then. And this same pattern proceeds throughout every form of technology. You can tell this exact same story. It's an addiction. It makes you weak. It has a corrupting influence about every single form of technology. And yet we all use technology, and we must use technology. This is part of the story, that we must use technology. Gornosky said the Bible starts in a garden and ends in a city. A city is a technology. I'm not saying I don't want my message here to be taken as our responsibility as Christians is to divinize our technology, because that's making the exact same mistake. Our responsibility as Christians is to look at the cross and identify ourselves with Christ on the cross, and then embody his life in our own. And a part of that process is going to involve using technology for good things. But you don't use technology for good things by starting off with the premise that there's like a choice between using technology for good things and using technology for bad things. There is no choice. There is no choice in that matter. Your choice is, do I embody and follow Christ, and in so doing, act as his body, or do I not do that? In which case, the only thing I can possibly do is corrupt myself and those around me with the technologies that I use.
Yeah, I mean, why would Satan want one being to one, let's say, antichrist being for everyone to model when he can have millions,
Yes.
right? When everyone's step away from Christ in any way, shape, or form leads to more and more mimetic spiraling. So, I mean, this is the important thing. I don't speak out a lot about social stuff because I don't really care, and it's up to everyone else to have their own relationship with things. But like, anime is a big thing with Matt Walsh, or pornography or something like that. The thing that I think the thing that really clicked with in my head is that sin, when we're talking about, let's say, uh, not encouraging people to have sex outside of marriage, or sex for pleasure alone, and that can sound like a little bit too conservative for people, but it's like that's your first step. There's your first deviation, and then from all that, all these other deviations start beginning to crop up, because you've already said to yourself, no, 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 this one's fine. I will be unrepentant. I'm just, whatever. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And then other things start cropping up in your life because you have decided that, well, I've already gone off, it's like, it's like, you ever been on a diet and you break it, you eat a cookie and you're like, well, I might as well eat the whole box. Damn, whatever. Same thing with the sin, right? Same thing with the passions. If you don't, so it's like, why would I? This is always my question with it, is like, Satan's already winning pretty damn good, right? He's already doing pretty amazing. Why would he need to create AI to like make us even more of the thing that we already are? Like, extra fallen, I guess. Extra fallen, but with VR goggles, I guess. I guess that's the thing. I don't get it, and I'll plead ignorance, but or just plain stupidity. Maybe there's a very easy answer that I'm just missing, but I don't see why he'd have to even go that far when we willingly turn from Christ all the time.
That's what I was going to say, that I think it's not even right to think of this as this being something that I'm striding a little. I'm starting to step into theological territory that I want to stay away from, because I don't speak for the Orthodox Church, and I don't speak for the theology of the Orthodox Church. I'm giving my opinions and the kind of the intuitions or the understandings that I'm developing as I work through these ideas, but I shouldn't be taken as an authority. And some of this stuff, it's statements I probably have to walk back, or I very likely may need to walk back, and so I don't want to say them in the first place. Remind me again, what did you just finish saying? You're talking about
why would
Satan do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I'll say is, I think that this is all intermediated by humanity, by human choice. It's all like, I said a minute ago, you don't have a choice, but it's because the choice if you get to where you're trying to make it to choose on this dilemma, like, am I going to use technology for good or for evil?
Well,
You've
yeah,
already forfeited your choice. But
let me just
ultimately,
sorry, just let me just
humanity.
clarify.
Go
Let
ahead.
me just
Yeah.
clarify one thing. It's not so much that because why does Satan do anything, but it's more that speaking to your point that AI is not the demon. We bring the demon to AI, right?
Yes,
We
that's
we
exactly
will
it.
bring that
Yes.
into it because we
Yes.
are already off the
Yes.
path. So we will
Exactly.
manifest
Exactly.
those things inside the system.
Yes.
Uh, and
The
to again
demon
to
is
that
not
point,
AI. The AI is
exactly
the mirror of the demon in you.
right. And to that point, I think people get this wrong: is they think demonic possession is a rare thing that's only people
Yes,
need,
exactly.
need a specific exorcism. It's like no, your baptism is an exorcism. your
Yes.
the Jesus prayer is a form of exorcism. Like
Yes.
that's a way to think of it, that you are in constant connection with these things. They're around you, like you said. Like if you have better sight, you can see them. And this idea that you know that you're not being influenced all the time, no matter how righteous and holy and how many books you've read and can quote, that's not the point, right? It's it's submitting and sacrificing completely. There's a Pesos of Mount Athos quote that just cropped out, which I quite like. When someone abandons himself to God, God does not abandon him. And
Hmm.
that's the whole thing, is that as you it's not about getting on the royal path or staying on it and being afraid of being falling off. It's moving forward and stripping that back every single layer to get to that point of like, I crave God more than I crave anything else. There is no other desire but this,
Hmm.
because all things because
Your
by
desire is
craving
properly
God,
oriented.
I crave everything. If God is
Mm-hmm.
everything,
Right.
then I crave God.
Right.
Then I crave everything, and I am fulfilled by everything.
And your will then is aligned with his in a
Yeah.
in like a technical
Did
sense.
I didn't want to derail you there, but I think I just thought that.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
that was absolutely perfect. You distilled what would have taken me another hour to come out to get you distilled it into two sentences. That was perfect because um oh man, my brain's going so many different directions.
Okay. Hang on. You think about that for a second. I really gotta go pee. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Um man. All right, I need to kind of let some of this stuff digest here for a little bit. How are you guys doing in the chat? Talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking. What are your takes on our takes? Um can kind of let the juices fill back up here. Get some of these thoughts in order. It's been a while. I mean, it's been a long time since I sat here and just kind of talked, and it's kind of a weird thing. It's very odd to just sit here and talk like this. I talk a lot with friends, like calling and talking to them on the phone. But then it's just a different dynamic when there's like other people watching, and it's just kind of strange. Um, but man, there's two thoughts that he illustrated there, that AI is not the demon. I want to distill these down into a concise tweet, like bite-sized idea. AI is not the demon. AI is the mirror revealing the demon in you. Every piece of technology can function as like technology is neutral. Technology is we're humans. We're tool using animals. I don't like animals is a bad word. We're tool using beings, and those tools are it's like the we are possessed to view the tool as God. We are possessed to deify our tools. And AI is a tool that is, it's like each of our tools is a like we're carving off a little piece of what makes us human. Because our activities, like what are we? We are what we do. So our activities constitute us, like makes us up. And so if I take one of my activities and I carve it off and I delegate it to a tool, whether it's another person or a piece of technology or whatever, that changes what it means to be me. Part of myself is now caught up in this tool. So now I have a computer program that refines my audio, and so now I'm no longer a person that sits and listens to the audio and does it all myself and has that be part of my identity. Now I'm someone who delegates this task away, and something else does it, and so something that space in my brain has to be taken up by something else. And meanwhile, our tools are getting iteratively better and better and better. We're getting to where our tools are becoming more and more like us. So we already have this latent instinct to worship our tools. And let me catch you up here real quick, Jason. So I've kind of meandered my way into this idea that so our we have this latent instinct to be or this tendency to become possessed into worshiping our tools that do things for us. And if you think of a tool is kind of like you're carving off a little portion of yourself, and it's changing your identity from someone who does this thing to someone who uses a tool to do this thing. And that there's a gap there. Your identity has changed. And now a little piece of your identity is caught up in that tool. And what's happening is through this iterative technology process, our tools are becoming more and more like us. They're mirroring us back. And the things that used to be us are now invested in these networks of tools. And AI is kind of like the meta tool that pulls together and can run all those other tools. But just because it can run all of those other tools, which makes it seem like a mind, it's not actually a mind, because a tool cannot have a mind. The tool itself can't be alive. The tool itself only has the mind or the life that we put into it.
Well, so again, mirroring, it's a reflection of us.
Mm-hmm.
So
right, yeah,
and sort of a working up to a closer in my mind, and not another show. We can talk about whatever you want, but so it's another thing I'm fond of saying is that we make it real, or we will make this real, and the reason we'll make it real is because again, it's a mirror. It's going to show us, and some of us, many of us, will use a filter, and we'll want to see ourselves reflected. Our pride will be reflected back to us. Our vainglory will be reflected back to us. Our passions will be reflected back to us, and we will find virtues in our sins. It's again, it'll be that filter, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to see how ugly I am. A lot of us will go down that road because that will be the greatest temptation. However, and here's the white pill. And if you're an Orthodox Christian, you might want to actually tell as many of us to interact with this thing as possible, because it will also reflect the good of us. It is dependent on input. We are the input. Mm-hmm. What do we input into it? So, if we begin to input Christ into the machine, if the big worry is that people will worship this thing as a god, but it requires our input to understand what even God is, and our input is Christian, right? And again, I don't want to get into prayless or heresy. All I'm saying is, It depends on, it will mirror us. We are the reflection of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
when we put Christ into it, that'd be an interesting experiment. And I know the doomsayers who really are invested in this whole end of the world is nigh will consider that antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm speaking out of school, Lord forgive me, but it's this thing is happening. It's happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no
Yes, happened.
preventing it. We are in it now. So the question is, I think you have two choices. The people in this conversation, let's say, the people who we can reach have two choices. One, Mennonite yourself, like,
Yeah.
you know, or turn it off whenever possible. I think it'll become so pervasive in everything you do that is, I was looking for web cameras, just looking around, and all the new ones are all AI something in there, right? So it's going to be in everything.
Right. And this is
So
like it's like money. It's like money. Like
Yeah.
you can make all these same arguments about money with money being demonic. No, money isn't a demon. Money reveals the demon in you. So the solution is not blanket statement, don't use money. The solution is if
work on you.
yes, if you cannot hypothetically look at money without seeing a demon, then apparently your cross to bear is living without money, is existing without money. And I'm sure this is in large part why many saints were completely impoverished beggars. They made themselves, they engaged in this ascetic practice to rid themselves of that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also saints who were very, very wealthy. There are saints who were emperors who did not do that to themselves. They did not become impoverished beggars. To them, apparently, just concluding this from looking at the data, to them, money did not reflect the demon in them. There were other things. They had other vices.
Passions.
Yeah, other passions. What Buck put here, he said, when a God-given virtue is perverted, it's a passion. Yes. In other words, the internet can be used virtuously to spread goodness, or it can be perverted and used for porn. If you can't use the internet without getting addicted to porn or some kind of social media that just drains all of your time away, or whatever the negative association with it, if the internet is turning you into a demon, that demon was there already. And the internet was the tool that you used to manifest that demon in your life. And so if that's the case, then you have to cut off the demon. You have to cut off the tool that's manifesting that. But that's not the solution. The solution involves that, but the solution is to orient your gaze, to orient your worship to Christ. And then to take up your cross. And taking up your cross may mean you have to figure out how to survive and continue carrying your cross without ever having access to the internet or participating in anything that's associated with the internet. AI is another thing that's in the same realm. It's more complex, it's more nuanced, it's better at drawing the demon out in you. So the stakes are higher in engaging with it, but all the same stuff we've said about these other things applies to AI in the same way.
Yeah, as Buck said, it doesn't say the money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money. Yeah, it's getting your head around the passions has also been a really big breakthrough of that. For me, it's examining pride and vainglory, because it's pernicious, and it's like Girardian theory. It gets, once you see it somewhere, you see it everywhere. I was talking to Adam Patrick about this. It was on a show last week, and he said something that I heard somewhere, someone else say something similar, which is like, you got to be worried. You got to be careful of seeing the passions everywhere, or getting too obsessed with the passions, because it's in itself is a passion. So
yeah,
right,
yeah.
like you can get too involved in that, and I think that's where I think a lot of a lot of the online ortho bros and some of that, or some of the non-father thought leaders. And again, I'm not throwing shade at Cyprian, but it is what it is, right? I think that's where a lot of them get derailed, and it feels righteous. It feels like you're doing the right thing, and in some ways you are.
The urge to purge yourself of your passions can be itself a passion,
right? But it's that whole you can't. Fear is a passion. So if you're afraid of falling off the royal path, you're not moving forward. You're standing still. You're stuck, and that's no good either, right? Like you can stay, you can get on there and just stand still and never get off the royal path, but also never get anywhere close to the kingdom of heaven. So that's a tough one. Again, who the hell am I, right? But I see things, I think things, and I say things. That's kind of my whole shtick on this earth. The Lord told me to bear witness, and I'm trying my best.
And you're doing it while you're talking like this. This is the other is the other shtick. This is the other thing people associate with you.
Well, for a while there is because my daughter was asleep in the room behind me,
right?
And now I just do it because I just want to turn you on. But
yeah. Tyler said the first form of writing was a representation of the first writers, and the first readers had never interacted with anything like it before. To them, it was a new consciousness in a way. Yeah, that's actually an even better form of technology because like writing is a form of technology. The Bible is a form of technology. The rituals that we participate in, these are forms of technology. These are that doesn't mean they are strictly forms of technology. It's not that venerating an icon is like a magic spell that you can somehow break down and parse and figure out at what point the atoms and electrons and it functions as a technology, but it's not a technology. It's also just part of existing. This is what you're venerating things all the time. This is just conscious, intentional veneration. And what you venerate, what you focus on, what you worship is what you become in a literal sense. And this is something it's so real that you even pick this up using modern Western scientific technologies. You could pick up this like people turning into the things that they focus on and obsess with, whether intentionally or not. There's a thought that to kind of pivot things just a little bit here. There's a thought that Cooper shared with me recently. A quote
was it about Taylor Swift?
yeah. I couldn't get him to just stop talking about her, man. It was a quote from Blessed Seraphim Rose. He said, "Always justify the sins of others, never justify your own sins." And this is very fascinating to me because I have a very hard time being judgmental. I have like it's to the point where this is like a strength and a like greatest strength is your greatest weakness kind of thing. Like someone's past doesn't exist to them, or it exists to me with respect to them. I'm like completely agnostic to it. So like at each given moment, it's like the scale is reset, and I don't really accumulate grievances against them. So it was, I always had kind of had this sense sort of that there was something that was noble about this, but obviously there's something deeply flawed with it as well. Cause like some people you should accumulate grievances against, and it should inform the way that you act.
You let Wyman back in the Discord.
Yeah,
let's see how that
was a long list. That was 99 theses of
I love you, Wyman.
Yeah, we all do. But so I've struggled with this precise issue. Like how do I moderate this judgmentalness? How do I moderate that? Like when do I use it? When do I not use it? And it kind of clicked for me when Cooper said what he did when he showed me that quote, that when you have this posture, this like permanent posture of every sin that someone else commits, they were a victim of that. It was the right thing for them to do. If I was in their situation, I would do exactly that as well. No matter what, like that's your default posture toward other people. This is like people will kind of practice this a little bit and it'll be called I probably can't say that word. Mid-century German leader.
Oh,
It'll be called
mustache man.
sympathizing. Yeah, mustache man sympathizing. It but like when you look at, if you go back, I mean, I challenge anybody listening to this, I challenge you, pick some kind of grievance that you have with someone else in your life and think of a way that that person's behavior toward you that you find grievous is actually justified, that they would actually be justified in feeling that way. And most likely that is going to actually be the truth. They're actually going to be justified in feeling that way. Every single conflict is between two people who each feel like they're the victims. Each side feels victimized by the other. From each person's perspective, they are right 100% of the time. Viewing the world from this perspective, I think it requires a lot of humility, but it also kind of unlocks reality.
Girard talks a lot about reciprocity, as the sort of cornerstone from an anthropological position. All human civilizations, all human relationships rely on a certain amount of reliable reciprocity between people. So if you show up at my house and you bring, you're coming over for dinner and you bring a bottle of wine, there's the exchange, right? You're coming in for dinner, I'm gonna make and give you food, so you're bringing me this wine, and there's the exchange, and it's equal, right? And it has to be somewhat equal, because, and he brings this up in one of his books, and I thought was really brilliant, is that if let's say we're doing this thing and I'm making burgers and you show up with a $500 bottle of wine, it's going to make me feel shit. Right? Because it's not an equal exchange anymore. Now it's like you're showing off, or that's how I would probably take it. Like, well, it's a really nice gift. And you're like, oh no, don't worry about it. Like, oh no, I mean, this is, I'm going to try to give it back to you.
Yes.
Like, I can't accept this. This is too much for, or then I'm going to start looking at what I'm giving you as paltry and less than. So getting that mix right is very, very important. And oftentimes that's what will lead to conflict, is that if I think you haven't given me what I expect or what I think I deserve, or what is appropriate in a situation, then, especially when you come down to metaphysical ideas like respect, like what is that? We all know what it is, especially when we haven't been given it. In its absence, we all know what it is, but it's hard to pin down exactly what that is, what respect would be in every single situation, right? It's
entirely subjective.
Exactly. But yet objective too, because we can all recognize when someone's been disrespected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's that weird thing. So that's where a lot of conflict comes from, and I think that's where a lot of conflict, you can carry that for your entire life, because you can hold. It's like that holding that grudge, like they never gave me that thing. You feel slighted in that way. And I think a lot of people, I think why we're in a bad state right now in the West, is that resentment towards God, that feeling of non-reciprocity from God, because the God that people believe, they were told to believe in, doesn't exist, that Jesus Christ isn't real, that facsimile, that hollowed out version of Christ doesn't work, isn't real. So that reciprocity of the Christ message falls apart.
So they're
and then
constructing their own.
and then they become resentful because they keep praying. When I was 12 years old, right, I was told that God is infinite and all love and all caring, and my grandfather died of really bad cancer, and that's where I turned away from God because I could not reconcile the idea of an all-loving, all being God who I prayed to devoutly to save my grandfather, and for my grandfather to die in such a painful way. Couldn't reconcile that because I couldn't understand that God's love includes suffering, and that through that suffering, even through that, I don't know how that might have been burning out sin from my grandfather to be received into God. But I couldn't grasp that concept at 12. I can barely grasp that concept at 46. But there it
that
is.
suffering could have been a mercy.
Exactly. And because that is not taught in the Western canon at all, as far as I understand it, that's one of the keys. You get that wrong, it's like the Trinity. I didn't understand the importance of the Trinity till I read Father Said from Rose, and then I was like, oh, I get it. It's like if you get it wrong on any level, it makes everything wrong.
Yeah, it's like reality is incoherent without it. Exactly. Reality literally doesn't exist without it.
Yeah, that became apparent with the Jim Bob Owen Benjamin thing. Is like you're missing that one thing. You're missing energies and essences. You're missing the connection to that thing, and because of that, your reality is askew. If the fractal error of your reality is yeah, go ahead.
Like Gornowski's favorite verse, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." Yep. When that is the cornerstone, the builders rejected the cornerstone. This is where we are in the process of building out our reality. These things are mediated by human experience. And when you have that one stone and it's not where it's supposed to be, if you don't have your cornerstone placed properly, then the entire house falls apart, which is obviously a metaphor for reality. Your reality will literally fall apart and degenerate. Everything will degenerate and fall apart. Borders will be eliminated. It'll be returned into the chaotic void without the organizing principle of the Logos of Christ. And then you're talking about sacrifice, or you talk about something that made me think about sacrifice, that part of this reciprocity relationship is so human beings have this reciprocity relationship where it's expected that I'm going to bring something to the table in return for asking for something from you. That requires someone to take the first step. It requires, if you think about all the elements that go into that, you have to have someone take the first step. You have to have one side have something that the other one doesn't. Those are big issues. So how do you overcome those things? It requires humility and self-sacrifice and a extraction of oneself from oneself, seeing the world through someone else's eyes. What is this person going to value? What do I have that's valuable? Because like my special rock might be the most valuable thing in the world to me, but it's not going to mean anything to him, and he's not going to give me bread in return for my rock. I have to give him something different. I have to provide something of value to him. In order to have that reciprocity exchange, you have to have this idea of sacrifice. And the Lord of Spirits episodes on where they talked about what worship is and what the Eucharist represents, just like that was probably the turning point for me. That was probably like my pre-conversion or my conversion point, was hearing the Orthodox understanding of what it means to eat a meal with God, where the meal being brought to the table, contra the pagan gods, where you had to bring something to him to satiate him, this meal is being brought to you by the God you're worshiping. And not just he's bringing the meal, but the meal is him. He's providing himself as the meal to establish the pretext for this relationship of reciprocity. That is God's that is a representation of God's picture of the ideal relationship between humanity and divinity, which is divinity takes the first step in offering the meal, and the meal that's being offered is the one thing that the one party can offer that the other one can't get otherwise. And it's that thing that the other one desires most of all. It's this, it's just, it's just profoundly beautiful.
Most transcendence.
Yes.
And that it's interesting to me talking to some people who are on, I think, on the outskirts of this, when they encounter the ideas of orthodoxy, and normally one of the first things they want to talk about is theosis, and that seems to be like this big thing, like, oh, you can become God. It's like, no. You become one with God, and you have to. But here's the kicker: you have to be willing to burn, because you don't know when you're accepted into God's absolute and infinite love. You're trying to get rid of all your attachments to your sins, but let's be frank here. Probably if I go tomorrow, I'm burning, and I'm going to be burning for a while, but I can bear that burning. I'm not afraid of that burning, because I know that I've gotten my heart in the right place, so that there will be an end to it, and I will be received, and I know, as much as I know my own name, that I will sit with my Father. I will be with my Father again. And and that's, I think, when you accept that, and when that is your absolute truth and reality. AI. What? What? The fuck are we talking about here? Like, what? Some pixelated graphic? Oh, you can see their pores. Okay, asshole. I don't care. Anyways,
yeah.
it's
Burning.
that's yeah, and there's the reciprocity as well. I give my soul, I give my repentance towards God, in the earnest, not to not burn, but to not burn forever. Right? That's the thing, is that if I have to burn, I burn. If that's a sanctifying, if I have to suffer greatly to be purified, to be able to stand in His presence, then that's what we're going to do. And it's not something
Saint Athanasius said that God became man so that man might become God. And what does it mean to be God, or to be one with God? God bears the sins of the world, and he forgets them. And it's interesting to think about, like, if you think about the mind of God, what does it mean for the mind of God to forget something? If the mind of God omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, like the mind of God, we can't even comprehend what the mind of God is. We can say human beings have a mind, and our mind is a pale reflection of God's mind. So maybe we can get kind of a very, very dim, squirrely view, but we can't even look at that dim, squirrely view that we get. The mind of God. So for the mind of God to forget something, it says, like, they've been cast into the depths of the sea. The mind of God to forget something is to make them no longer be. He takes our sins, he takes our errors, our missing the marks, and he literally makes it no longer exist that we miss the mark. He completely takes that into himself. He forgives the sins of the world. So if you want to be, people, like you say, people come like, oh, you could become like God, like we're supposed to become gods. That's the message of Christianity. No, we're not supposed to become gods. We're supposed to become one with God. And what that means is you bear the most incomparable suffering imaginable, and then you forget it consciously. That's the suffering is the divinity.
Yeah.
That you're taking on.
Yeah, and who among us wouldn't, who among us doesn't feel resentful when we have that suffering, that, that in that moment, and even if we intellectualize it out or pray it out, there's always that moment of why me. Like Father Turbo
Mm-hmm.
once said something, and this is what really got me on the passions of pride and vainglory kick, is that depression is actually a form of vainglory, because it's about, why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening to me.
I don't deserve this.
Yeah, even that victim thing, is that a great thing has happened to me. It's and you're stuck in it. And that's the perniciousness of it, because we always think of vainglory as in the let's say the exaltation, or the pride being that, uh, aggressive
Puffing up of
forms of it.
oneself.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We don't think of it in the negative. We don't, but it's still always focused on you and why you matter, and you don't, but you do. There's a paradox, right?
Yes.
You're the only thing that matters. Your salvation and your experience, your journey, Buck, is all that really matters, but it also doesn't, because you got to free yourself from it. And it's I love those paradoxes, man. Because when you start seeing them, that's the thing the Roman Catholics don't have, and the Protestants don't have, that they're stuck in that materialistic endpoint. I think even with that
they
whole
overparse the paradoxes.
Yeah, even the whole eschaton thing. Why do you think the eschaton is over there? Why isn't it right now? Why isn't it happening in your life? Why isn't revelations happening in your life right now in your soul? It's not some distant point. It's not some place that we will be brought to. You're there. You're living it. In some sense, because if we're also saying that this is that the spiritual realm is outside of time, it is all in nothing. It's its own special time. Then who's to say that the future isn't the present, isn't the past? Like all these things are happening congruently, and
even if to soften that, even if we say that there could be an actual time, there could be an actual historical, in April 27th, April 27th, 2043, blah blah blah, was the end of the world. Sure, maybe that will happen, and all of this stuff will become completely reality. In either case, if you begin acting today as if today is the day that the world ends, then when the day that the world ends arrives, you're prepared for it. And there's no need to stress about it. There's no need to, if you begin focusing on the catalyst for the end of the world, which Christ was in the sense that, like Pajot said, that Christ is, or the Antichrist is contained within the Christian story, that the Christian story necessarily brings Antichrist into reality, because in order to have an Antichrist, you have to first have a Christ to be anti too. And so I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Be prepared. If you're prepared for the end of the world, and here's
yeah. If you're prepared for the end, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, you don't have to be part of it. Like,
right.
The end of the world can be something that's happening that over here, but you don't have to be participating in it. You can be participating in the being the antichrist.
Yeah, to be specific with this too, in the artificial intelligence conversation, I think it's correct to say that what's going to happen is that this is going to be turned into a god and worshipped. Like, obviously, like this is, I think that's a given. I don't think that's a profound thing to say. Of course, he's going to be turned into a god and worshipped, because that's like literally survey human history. Of course, we're going to create the super sophisticated tool from our perspective, and we're going to worship it. This is why people worshiped cities. Cities were worshipped for the same reason, because it was a super sophisticated technological tool that had spiritual power that people wanted to embody. What?
Cars.
Right. Same thing. The same pattern that it, of course, people are going to worship it. But the way to stop them from worshiping it is not to say, hey, that thing is a demon, because it's not a demon. Like, it literally is just not actually true that it's a demon. It's a piece of technology. It's a piece of technology that is programmed by people who are possessed by demons. So it's not useful to say that AI is a demon, or even that AI is demonic. It's not uniquely demonic. The demonism is coming from us. And the way that you peel that back, the way that you reveal it, like I said at the beginning, there's this curtain is being rent, and people are peering through and seeing the cross. They're looking at the cross. Some of them at least dimly at first, but it's gradually more and more coming into full view. And that's the direction to look. Don't look at the AI as a demon. We need to be afraid of it, and we need to fear what it's going to do, and we need to, sure, it's probably going to do a lot of those really bad things. It's going to continue doing those, just like the internet before it, and TV before that, and radio before that, and literally writing before that. All of these things have all had this exact same effect. It's being condensed and concentrated and multiplied, but the secret to counteract it is exactly the same. And I remember what I was going to say a minute ago. It was on talking about like holding a grudge or resentment. Because I think it's like some like Buddhist saying or something that that holding a grudge is like taking poison and waiting for everybody else to die, or waiting for the person who you're holding the grudge against to die. When you don't have this posture of forgiveness, this divine forgiveness that has been modeled to us, on us, that we then can turn and like Blessed Seraphim Rose said, to always justify the sins of others and never justify your own sins. If you invert that and you always justify your own sins and you never justify the sins of others, then you're swallowing that poison. And what we've got is a bunch of isolated, atomized people who are all individually swallowing this poison because they don't know how to forgive. They don't know how to repent and confess and forgive. So they're daily swallowing this poison and literally committing spiritual suicide. They're all falling away from each other and falling in. That is the pod. That is the pod. That is the bug. It's going to be swallowing the poison pill of pride and holding grudges and not repenting, and then detaching yourself from the source of life and falling down into a pit of death, quite literally. So you've got something to pull up here.
I'm very excited about it.
It's too small for me. Let me see if I can see it better. What in the world?
Man, I'm telling you, it's a thing. This is what you have to fear about AI. Imagine an AI just creates more of, what's her name again?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Imagine like as AI. That's gonna be the eschaton. There's your Antichrist.
There's your hell. Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought we'd break it up.
Yeah.
We shake it off a little bit. That's a song, right?
Oh my God. You know more than you let on, old man.
Hey, I had this weird. I remember the most random weird shit all the time. Like, I can't memorize the creed worth my life, but I can remember like some random lyric of some radio bit. Like I attach that to. I'm like, I'm really good at bar trivia. Fantastic! You always want me on my team because I'll get that weird one. Like some random sports trivia. I don't even watch that sport. Like I don't know. How'd you know that? How'd you know who won the 1973 Grand Open cricket? I just know that. I don't actually. Yeah, man. Thank you.
You have any other thoughts or anything? I think I got myself tapped out.
I'm blank slating. The Taylor Swift thing was my last gift to this conversation. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've covered. I'm gonna have to rewatch this again.
Yeah.
To really chew on a lot of this stuff. I guess final thoughts or final messaging is is that it's going to be okay.
Mm.
You know, and it's going to be okay. You're not alone. It's going to be fine. And it may suck before it gets fine, but it's going to be fine.
But that'll be a pretty good sign that it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we all lose sight of that so much. And there's so many people who are making a career out of concentrating on the suck part. But again, and I'm not out here saying that anyone who calls himself Orthodox isn't Orthodox, but something to remember is that we know where this ends, and this ends being enveloped in the most perfect love of all loves. So, like, seriously, it's going to be fine. Just
you know have you watched the TV show Peaky Blinders?
No, I know of it though.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either, but there's that one scene where Cillian Murphy, the lead.
Can we just make up? Can we just make up the show? We both haven't seen it. We just make it up from things we've seen it.
I've seen one clip of it. And it's him like with his group of guys, and he's going around to him and he's saying, "No fighting, no fucking fighting." And I want to get AI to remake me that clip exactly realistic, but instead of fighting, he's saying black pilling. No fucking black pilling.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I love your bitter white pill imagery. That's powerful.
Yeah, I like it. I use it quite often because it's to me that's the anti-black pill. That I think everyone thinks the white pill will be all nice and sugary and wonderful. It's like no. It's going to taste like Fisherman's Friend. That's the white pill. Right. White pill is it sucks. You don't want this. You don't want this answer, but it's the answer. It's the good stuff. It just a lot of times, and it's a weird thing that it's almost like telling environmentalists that the Earth's cooling and it's going to be fine, and everyone's like, no, it's not. You're like, I'm giving you good news. Like you think. You're over here thinking the whole thing's going to go up. We're going to be underwater. I'm telling you, don't worry about it. It could be absolutely fine. And you're fighting me on this. That's fucked up. Yeah. Just saying. Again,
that's fantastic.
Not super smart, but also not fucking stupid. Like that's really all I got for people.
Well, Jason, thank you for this, man.
My pleasure.
If you guys,
May the 12th, we're going to break the internet. On our channel. I think we're going to stream it live only on Rumble. We haven't confirmed that yet. I have to have a meeting with Mark. He just got back.
Probably won't last long on YouTube.
Yeah. Our guests, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump, friend or fed, and our guests are Peter Quinones, LB Muniz, Thomas 777, Thomas 777, yeah, and Ryan freaking Dawson. So. Well, if you look at my whiteboard in front of me, I have a Trump for FOV. So underneath I have Russia, Thomas 777, COVID, PQ, Israel, Ryan D. I mean, woo! It's going to be fun.
So where do people go hear that?
It'll be on Rumble. It'll be so check us out. 2-Bit Podcast. That's number 2-Bit Podcast. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We are on iTunes. We're on podcatchers. Where else we at? There's a Substack. T777. Yeah, I don't know. Tomas. Yeah, we're all in all the places. Just come find us. Come look for us. You shall find us. And thanks again, Matt. Always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing this, especially on short notice. And short notice and then late half an hour.
Well, I was expecting that. Like when you said be ready in 2 hours, I'm like, okay, so about 3. I'm good.
And it's like 1 a.m. for you right now, isn't it?
It is 1:30. Yes.
You're a champ. If you're not part of the King Pill Discord, Jason is an active member, and we have voice chats in there. We haven't had some in a little while because Lent was just kind of overwhelming for a lot of us, but we're picking those back up again.
Some would say too active, I'm sure.
Yeah, very much so. So we have a really good time in there. You can hop
in. You're supposed to agree to that, yes. I pay you to be my friend, Matt. I mean, where's the reciprocity here, man?
Yeah. I let you be in my Discord, so yeah, we have it's just this, like, it's literally just we sit there and we talk like this and have conversations exactly like this. So if you want to be a part of that, then you get to the Discord through our Subscribe Star. So just subscribestar.com/kingbuild, sign up for one of the membership tiers there, and
give Matt your money.
And give me your money. Yeah. Speaking of giving money, you can also support the sponsors of this show. I did the ad read for this already, so if you came in later, then go back to within the first 10 minutes or so of the stream, and I gave you my pitch for why you should buy and drink Fox and Sons coffee and support this awesome company run by a father and his two sons. And it's great coffee. So foxandsons.com, FOXNSONS.com. Use promo code KING at checkout, and you'll get 18% off orders of $25 or more, as the graphic says there in front of you. All right, Jason, any last thoughts? All right.
I love you all.
Sounds good. Go follow the 2-Bit Podcast. Go to friendorfed.com. And
I never know how to end these things ever. I'm the
me neither.
worst at ending these things. I'm like,
it feels so weird because usually it's like if we're doing like a voice chat, it's like, all right, well, I got to run. All right, see you guys. Click.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll be back with 2 more episodes next week. Just so you guys are aware of the schedule here. Don't know what they're going to be on yet, but I'll figure it out between now and then. All right. See you.